Okay, so this is sort of a state of the toolkit panel, where we are, where we're going, maybe where you want us to go, hopefully, and question time. That's really what this is for. Do we want to start off with the stuff we've talked about earlier?
You go.
Me? Okay. Well, the first thing we'll mention before we take questions, because I sort of expect this question to come up. Yesterday, at the end of the DITA Europe Day, one of the people in the audience was talking to me about the upcoming 2.0. So when will it be released? I said, soon. Yeah, but what does that really mean? Soon. Like, oh yeah, kind of a knowing nod. Yeah, soon. Developers say soon. That means sometime in the next sometime. So the big news is, it's there. It's released. DITA Open Toolkit 2.0 is now available for download.
Wow.
If you go to the website, it is the latest stable release.
Nice.
Really, I think you probably all have figured out by now, but most of that applause should be directed to Jarno. And if you haven't already, and you appreciate the work he's done on this release and others, check out his tip jar. He has a tip jar online, which he will never tell you about himself, but it's there, in case you'd like to chip in. Yeah, it's exciting to finally have this. 2.0 is a big thing. We were looking back at the dates and thought we might have made it right at 10 years, because it was right about 10 years that this all started to go public. But it looks like we actually came in just a few months in advance. The Toolkit 1.0 was released in March of 2005. That's when it was officially announced. So we could have just held things back a little longer to make more exciting timing, less exciting venue. We picked the venue. So anyway, that's the news. On to questions. Or Jarno, would you like to add anything?
Well, I can just tell you guys that 2.0 was about 2 years in the making, approximately. I started to work on it at 1.7 period, approximately, working in parallel. I called it Open Toolkit Next at the time. Didn't know what to do with it, but I knew that I'd be able to break things. Since it's not backwards compatible in every sense. One of the things that we've done is move to XSLT2, which means you may need to adjust your style sheets in your plugins. In some cases they just work. I would have, in a way, wanted to break more, because now I had the permission, since we follow the semantic versioning with our version numbers, so when the first number changes, it's not backwards compatible anymore. That's when you can make changes that change the API in a way. We don't have an API because XSLT doesn't have an API, but still we changed some things that aren't backwards compatible. Why release now? It's been too long. So we have to release it at some point. I could have kept on working on it for a year more, or 2 or 3, but release early and often is usually the better option. We didn't release early and often. We did have milestones, but still. And now it's out. Now I can have a break for 1 week or so.
He can have a break, not that the code will break. So, any questions about 2.0 or otherwise?
Oh,
yes, right in
are
front.
you concurrently working on the next version too?
So the question, the question: are you concurrently working on the next version? So.
Started yesterday.
Yeah, I'm guessing that not more than half of you daily refresh the toolkit page. The packages were actually uploaded yesterday, and then we did some double checking today before making the announcement. So I apologize to the person who I said it will come out soon. The packages were actually already up at that point. I just couldn't say anything, or chose not to say anything.
Well, this is a better event.
Yeah.
To be coming out with that scoop. Great job.
So thank you for coming. You all get to hear the news in person.
Cool.
Or over the web. Or over the web for those of you who are listening, yes. Other questions?
Wow.
Yes.
I'm curious about
Let's try.
I'm kind of curious about the managing of all these packages. If there's, I mean, it's come up in different ways and forms and different aspects of. We're kind of having all these funky plugins and things that's kind of tracking that stuff and tracking the changes and kind of making sure my dependencies are lined up or my constellations, and we can get all this kind of DevOps esoteric hobgob. Is there any kind of
Not exactly. I mean, there's been talk off and on in the past about how to manage plugins. I mean, there are a lot of plugins that are out in the world that get broad usage. There are a lot that not very many people use. There are a lot that would be used if people knew about them. So how do we make that better known and make them work together? One of the problems is, as you see, the size of the team is not terribly large. We can't manage all these things. Early on in the project, when it was all at SourceForge, we tried to make SourceForge a repository for plugins so people could donate them. And that happened several times, and very few were ever touched again. Essentially, once people handed off responsibility to us, they went away or saw no need to update. And so people who started to use these thought they were us and started submitting bug reports to us, which isn't great. I mean, it's really better if the plugins, the source, the deliverables, whatever, can be managed by the person that owns them, maintains them, things like that. The question then becomes, how do you find out about them? And we've had several ideas, and we haven't had a good resolution to how to do that.
So one thing that I've tried to do, so I have the DITA for Publishers project. That's a big collection of plugins. Tried to make that relatively easy to use. But there's a whole lot of other stuff that people do, that I do. There was no good place to put it. I started a GitHub organization called DITA-Community, which I intend to be a place where people can just put stuff, you know, random stuff. Everything there now I think is me, because I just, you know, all right, well, now I have a place to put stuff. But I would encourage you, if you have a plugin of any size and you don't have a better place to put it, add it to the community. I'll make anybody, you know, I can create whatever projects, you can own that project and have it. So my goal there was for DITA community be a place that people could go and find things because it was, you know, it was obvious and hopefully relatively persistent. I don't know how that's going to play out. It's only been there for a couple months, but that was my attempt. The other thing that I think is, and I don't know what you guys have been planning along these lines, but now that with 2.0, you can simply deploy a zip file and have it be installed. Now we can start looking at using something more like a Maven repository to manage not just the, you know, to actually dynamically pull down dependencies. And I don't know enough about the background technology to know what that involves, but it can't be that hard. Other people do it.
Simple matter of programming.
Yeah, it's simple. The reason why we don't already have a repository of plugins, and the repository would only need to be a list of URLs, titles, and descriptions of various plugins. So who controls that, and who actually verifies that the plugins aren't dangerous? Because I assume someone would upload a malicious plugin which would delete everything in everyone's laptops. So someone would need to test every plugin that's submitted to that list. So we're not a vehicle of malicious code. You probably don't think about it, but if we're going to have a list like that, we have to. And that would require someone doing it. We don't have that much time. So it's just a matter of getting someone to do it, donating their time in a way.
Additional curation.
And in a way, when a plugin is updated, it needs to be checked again. So that would be something that's needed. But after a repository of some sort is available, then we can start using it and automate the use of it. The problem is, of course, is that dependency management is something that has been done before, Ivy, Maven, everything. We wouldn't want to reinvent the wheel again or re-implement the same idea again. So I'd like to find some technology that allows us to do it without actually writing any code ourselves. but that would need to integrate to Open Toolkit nicely. We'll find something.
Just a quick, back to the first point on the plugin management. Isn't there a Git mechanism to add up the signatures and the hash tables? I've seen on a couple of packages I was been working with. And
We can sign every version of that list and have someone be responsible. Robert, do you want to be responsible? Do you want to create that list? Probably he doesn't. So it's just a matter of, we have resources or ways to sort of track what's there, who actually accepted this. It's just that someone needs to do the work.
Other questions? Other questions? In the back.
No, there are people also online.
Hey, a couple of simple questions. Do you know, is there a way to determine the size of an image from within a plugin?
Not yet. So we already have code in place that reads all the images and tracks the resolution and the size of it, the dimensions.
I see.
We can add the information, what's the file size. So in a way, the code is there, you just have to make a small modification for that. Because originally I implemented it so that in XLT you can check whether a graphic or an image is very wide, and depending on that use a different layout, like a page wide. And then and then the author of the data topic would need to care about the size of the image.
Sure, yeah. Okay, the other question is perhaps simpler. It's to do with section div. Section div currently does not support the title elements. Could it? Is
No.
there a reason why it shouldn't?
Yes. Section divs don't have titles. They're divisions within titles. The div elements in DITA 1.2 and then the div element in DITA 1.3 explicitly do not have titles, right? By explicit design. The only things that have titles in DITA: maps, topics, sections, figures, and tables. That's it. So nothing else may have a title.
You want to talk to why?
Kind of a,
Michael. Okay, that's why you're here. You were ready for this
I
question.
may not contribute to the toolkit, but I can contribute to this discussion. So we wrestled with this a lot, especially in the early days of DITA. Sort of an earlier incarnation, the same question was, why not make sections nestable? And if we could make sections nestable, they've got optional titles. We wouldn't need section div. Yeah, so it's the same. So that question has been around since DITA 1.0. And the fundamental answer was, if we do that, then there is no more topic orientation. You can have a topic title at the top and no more topic boundaries, no guarantees about where the related links or the metadata will go, no guarantees about where new subjects are being introduced and appropriate chunking could occur. So that was basically it. We said, if you want to actually nest, if you want to go one level down and say these are regular sections that are, the syntax section or the context section, or the steps section, that's reasonable. Or if you want to specialize section div because you've got some, a couple of 2-level, but still regular, still generatable headings, then that's totally valid. You've still got one subject, you've got some structure within the subject. But if you want to nest with sort of infinite variability and free-form titles, that's probably some form of semantic hierarchy, or of topics that are being introduced. And then just do it with nesting topics, and you can certainly nest topics infinitely. There's no barrier to that. It's just that if you want infinite structure with free-form titles and no topic boundaries, it's no longer a topic-oriented architecture at all. So that's why we sort of drew the line there. And it's not to prevent flexibility, because like I said, you can still nest topics infinitely. It's to ensure that we've got some sort of trigger point when we can say, you know, if you want that level of flexibility, think about where the topic boundaries are. And just call those out as you get that flexibility and apply those topic boundaries appropriately. So, like I said, you still have the same flexibility, just some constraints on how you exercise it.
Okay, thanks. I'm not entirely sure that is the answer I was looking for. I think I don't quite agree that flexibility is still there. But anyway, I understand. Thanks.
Yeah, it's also worth pointing out at DITA-OT Day that that's really a thing for the Oasis TC. Like the toolkit can't introduce titles when Oasis has decided they're not going to be there. And given the makeup of this group saying they're not going to be there, I don't think the TC will be changing their mind anytime.
Sort of as a side note, occasionally I ask Robert, can I implement this? It breaks DITA or isn't conformant to DITA. Can I implement this? Like filtering based on any attribute or something else. And he goes, there. So occasionally I, not a member of TC, would like to implement something that doesn't follow the spec just because I can or could. But we're not adding any features to Open Toolkit that break DITA compatibility. If we do, Robert probably won't, but if I do, it'll be behind a flag that you have to actually change in the configuration that says don't follow the spec. And then it might start to do things that don't follow the spec, but we probably won't add those. PDF readers, comparing, does it look the same? Yeah, no. Okay, let's draw a red line around it and send it to the developer. We don't want to do manual testing, everything needs to be automated because we don't have resources to do the automation and it doesn't make sense to have people involved in the testing phase. People are involved in writing the tests, but then all the tests should be automated. We could be comparing the PDF output. There are various tools to diff PDF output, and for example, Antenna House is a way of diffing output for the stuff it gets. But in most cases, it's just running the pre-processing because that's the most difficult bit, and comparing that. Of course, you have to understand that if you make a change in the style sheets that render, for example, HTML, the output changes a bit. You need to actually go and fix all the test cases that have expected output to match the thing you actually meant to change. Sometimes that takes a lot of time and that's tedious, but you have to do it to be sure that you're not making mistakes, because most people make mistakes all the time. So I don't trust myself not to break everything all the time.
So for example, say the toolkit had a bug in it where every phrase element was dropped. Well, our test passed today, that means our expected output is full of missing phrases. Well, when we fix that, we have to change the expected output for every one of those test cases so that it now passes with the phrase, things like that. So even when you fix something, you may need to go and fix the test case, which is why you really only want to have each test case once. In terms of the manual testing, I'll say that's how it was done in the toolkit in the early years. We had an actual test team that compared outputs. They did a diff for HTML, they actually looked at the PDFs, which is why it took a week between freezing and releasing every time. And without that automation, today you check something in that's horribly wrong, GitHub, Travis tell you within a few seconds. Back then, if you did that, you had to wait until your development ended and it went to the testers. So, yeah, automation is good.
Is there a particular test framework that so it's just...
Is there a particular test framework? You shook your head and then nodded.
Yeah, well,
I mean,
Java code uses
JUnit.
both JUnit, and basically the integration tests are built on top of JUnit too. There are probably multiple ways to improve that, but I also have to do development, as in adding features. So I had to build that just because I couldn't work in an environment where the computers assumed that I didn't make mistakes.
I think we're nearing the end of the scheduled time. Wow. I was worried early on that no one appeared to have questions. I guess I was wrong about that. Oh, another question in the back. Hey George, maybe you could just throw the microphone?
Actually, not a question, but a comment is I would like to thank the panelists, George, everybody at Synchrosoft, all the people who came together to make this event possible. This is not the first post-DITA Europe event I've attended, hosted by Synchrosoft, but certainly it has been a very valuable one for me, and I think for some of my colleagues, and I'd just like to thank everybody who was involved in pulling this together.
Yeah,
And I know Jarno doesn't travel very much, but hopefully we can do this again in less than 10 years.
Yeah, thank you so much to George for making this happen.
I want to mention again Gnostics.
Yes, and the other sponsors.
And
DataWorks.
DataWorks and Ixiaso.
Yeah, and I guess I've been working with the toolkit longer than anyone else in the room, and when I started, there is no way I could ever have imagined this. You know, flying to Europe and having all of these people show up. And this is just incredible. This has been a great day.
Thank you so much for taking the time to be here, because initially we planned for like 50 people, but then we ended up with 91 here. So it's a good turnaround.
How many were online?
We had about, I think, you have that information there, right?
Both the
26.
That's a long webinar.
Yes. So the online audience was between 40, 30 people, but then there were also others that dropped. So in total, probably about 80 in the online audience. So hi everyone.
Yeah.
So no other question. Okay, so thank you again, everyone, you, because we're here, you're here, and hope to have this event, this kind of event also next year, at least, if not sooner. Yeah, and we'll see you then next then. Goodbye, thank you.